The scent of apple hung heavy, a cloying sweetness that spoke of temptation and sin. Adam knelt, his teeth sunk into the forbidden fruit, or did he? Juice ran down his chin, staining the earth. He didn't hear the rustle of leaves. He didn't see the shadow fall over him, vast and terrible. Then a voice, cold as the north wind, cracked through the garden. "So you have chosen." Adam flinched. He knew that voice, knew the power it held, the fury it could unleash. He turned, apple tumbling from numb fingers. God stood before him, eyes like lightning in a stormy sky. No gentle father this, but a being of wrath. "You dared," God boomed, "to disobey." Terror choked Adam's words. He wanted to beg forgiveness, to plead ignorance, but the words died in his throat. He saw the judgment in God's eyes, the disappointment that cut deeper than any blade, and then a new emotion flickered in those divine depths. Not anger, but something colder, more calculating. Punishment, not forgiveness, was to be meted out. "You will learn," God said, voice low and dangerous, "the true weight of your transgression. You will learn what it means to be small, to be powerless." And with a snap of divine fingers, the world went black. Darkness pressed down on Adam, heavy and suffocating. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Panic swelled, choking him. He was trapped, his body a prison. Sleep paralysis, they called it in a world he no longer recognized. Only this was no fleeting nightmare. This was something ancient, something primal. This was the hand of God upon him. Then a new presence made itself known. A shifting, shadowy figure coalesced from the darkness at the foot of Adam's prison. It was vaguely humanoid, but elongated, distorted. Its edges flickered like a flame, tendrils of darkness reaching out towards him. Fear, cold and sharp, cut through the fog of paralysis. The Shadow Man, a bizarre union creation of God, moved with unnatural speed, gliding closer, targeting Adam. Adam wanted to scream, to thrash against his invisible bonds, but he was utterly powerless. He then fell on his back from the horrid pain. He could only watch as the figure stopped beside him, its form solidifying. It reached out a hand. Each finger and hand phased through his body like a ghost. It hurt, like his soul was being torn out. A searing pain ripped through Adam's side, a pain so intense it threatened to tear him apart. He felt something being pulled from him, something vital. He glimpsed white bone, stark against the darkness, before he mercifully slipped into unconsciousness. Adam awoke to the feeling of blades against his skin. He opened his eyes, disoriented. He was lying in a vast field of green. Blades of grass, taller than any tree he'd ever seen, swayed above him, each one a towering emerald spear. The scent of earth and dew filled his nostrils, unfamiliar and overwhelming. He tried to sit up, but his muscles screamed in protest. He was weak, his body alien. He felt weird. He looked down at himself, his heart seizing. He was tiny, no bigger than an ant. His limbs were thin, his skin pale. He felt fragile, breakable. A strangled cry escaped his lips. This was God's punishment. To be made small, insignificant in a world built for giants that dwarfed him. He was lost in an endless jungle of green, the sun a distant pearl through the canopy above. Despair washed over him, cold and suffocating. A sound pierced his despair. Laughter, feminine and booming, echoed across the vast field. Adam turned, his heart hammering in his chest. He looked up in utter horror. A figure stood at the edge of his vision, silhouetted against the sun. She was immense. She was the first woman, and what a woman she was. She was a giantess, her form towering over the landscape. Adam never seen a woman before, and she was enormous, beautiful and terrifying, and created from his rib. She was so gigantic in a way that stole his breath and almost made him faint. Her long hair, like long brown chocolate, cascaded down her back. Her eyes were the color of the green emeralds, but her lips were curved in a cruel smile. She wore leaves as a dress, and she was barefoot, her feet and body beautiful and horrifyingly huge, and her eyes held a chilling amusement, an evil glint of desiring to dominate. She took a step closer, and trembled beneath her bare feet. Adam got knocked over. Her feet had a certain scent. Adam was strangely drawn to them. "My dear Adam," she purred, her voice like a booming, echoing dark melody. "I am your woman, don't be afraid. Am I not made from you?" She leaned down, bringing her face closer, her huge, beautiful face and green eyes staring down at him up close. Adam shrank back, fear a living thing within him. He was at the mercy of a giantess created from his body. "Don't you recognize me, my dear Adam?" she chuckled. "I am Eve. I was made from your rib, you know, made to be your god. I think you'll like this. It's making you excited." She laughed, her booming voice and laughter making Adam tremble in fear. "Eve," he whispered, the name heavy on his tongue. She smiled, a predatory gleam in her eyes. "That's right, little man. Eve, I'm going to dominate you. I know you've never seen a woman before, but you will love us, hate us, and we will play with you for eternity," she boomed. "Yes, my dear Adam, you are my little man, and I will love you as a woman can." She scooped him up in her hand, holding him close to her face. He struggled against her grasp, but it was like fighting a mountain. "No, please," he cried out. "Don't you understand, my dear Adam?" She laughed, her breath warm on his face, her voice booming in his tiny ears. "God is gone from this place. I am your god now. I didn't know tiny men like you were so silly, but I guess I'll have to show you what your future will hold." She tossed him in the air, catching him again with a laugh. He was a doll to her, a source of amusement, Adam screamed as Eve laughed. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into years. He learned to navigate the towering forest of grass, learned to scavenge for food, to avoid the crushing footsteps of Eve and the other giant women who came to populate this strange world, which was horrible for Adam. Because Eve tried to use him to repopulate, creating millions of daughters, Adam tried to hide from them, but they would keep finding him. He was their plaything, their pet, and they were beautiful, lovely colossuses built for domination. Knew they would step on him. He had nightmares of millions of giant women surrounding him and eating, stepping on him. It was horrible. He kept having night terrors. He aged, but he never grew. He watched year after year as the giant women grew even bigger, birthing daughters who towered over the landscape. He alone remained small, a constant reminder of his transgression. His seed, it seemed, could yield no sons in this place, only daughters, inheriting their mother's size and their mother's dominion over him. He was trapped in an eternal game, a twisted parody of his former life. Once he had walked with God in the cool of the evening. Now he scurried in the shadows, forever beneath the heel of giants. God's punishment was not swift, not merciful. It was a slow, agonizing erosion of everything he was, a never-ending lesson in humility and despair. And as he lay hidden, listening to the laughter of giant women echo through the endless fields, Adam knew he would never escape God's dark gift. He was condemned to live out his days in this grotesque paradise. A tiny man in a world made for giants, he eventually found out that he never sinned, and God was a mortal man named Dr. Bulker, who was long dead. Everything he knew was a lie. It was all an experiment. Bulker just needed many Adams to be food for the giant women who loved tiny men as their meals. Adam soon realized he would be their food and be replaced as he heard creepy giggling in the background.